Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Jaws on the NES. And as most of you may already know, or at least you should know, because if you haven't, well, you must be living under a rock or something, Jaws was a very successful movie that was actually based after a novel, but the movie was very well known, especially for its music. And whenever Jaws got more sequels, they ended up getting a lot more ridiculous over time. Of course not ridiculous to the point of Sharknado, but pretty ridiculous enough. So that's just a brief of what you need to know in case you are one of those people that happen to live under a rock, but anyways, I'm here to talk about the game. So it was developed by West 1-Bit Entertainment, and published by the three famous letters that you're probably familiar with, LJN. Yeah, it's one of those games. Now, this game doesn't really have a story to it. In fact, it's not really based after any of the movies, but it does have certain parts where you can obviously tell that they had ideas from the movie. So yeah, there's no Martin Brody, there's no Quint, and there's no Matt Hooper either. But I do find that the submarine guy that you use does kinda look like Hooper a little bit, but I'm just using my imagination for that part. So there's no real story to this, just, you know, try and find Jaws and kill him. So let's start talking about the gameplay. So at first it starts with an overhead view of the boat, and it kinda looks like an RPG a little bit, because there is random encounters. And when you hit something, it goes into a side view. And right here, you have to kill all the stingrays, the jellyfish, and even the little sharks. And you have to collect shells, because apparently shells are the currency in this world. You can also collect crabs, but all they do is make you move faster, which is useful. And finally, there's stars to collect, but you don't have to get these. All they do is just give you points, and well, let's face it here, who gives a shit about points? So after you survive against the fish for a little while, it goes back to the overhead view with the boat. And all you have to do from here is try to go to the next town and afford the newest thing, such as the receiver. And by the way, this picture kind of looks like Jaws is like coming right out of the screen. And you can level up your power just by going back to these towns back and forth. Yeah, it kind of sucks that there's only two, but oh well. So where do you find Jaws in this game? Well, you can encounter him at any time. Yes, you can even encounter him when it's your first time playing the game, and there you go, there's the final boss. But good luck trying to take him down with your power at only being at 1. Which is why you need to level up your power. And that's another reason why I find this to be sort of RPG-ish, is because of the whole grinding thing. As weird as the idea is, I kinda like it. And speaking of shells and trying to get up your power, you can also get shells by doing these bonus stages which happen randomly. And all you do is just drop some bombs on some jellyfish, which is kinda weird, but you know, oh well, that's not really a huge complaint. Just a little excessive, don't you think? But this bonus stage kinda reminds me of Galaga, just with the pattern that the jellyfish are going. And the more times you hit them, the more shells you will obtain. And then you can find this mini submarine randomly. And I believe this shoots and moves around faster, and you can take an extra hit. And yes, this game only has one-hit deaths, which kinda sucks, but at least you do get plenty of lives. And once you manage to take down Jaws' life, it's not over yet. You have to do this one other thing, where it's just the front of the boat and Jaws is just going back and forth with his fin. And you have to ram him with the boat, and this is easier said than done, because this part, I fucking hate this part. It's just a pain in the ass. But after that, the game's over, and yeah, this game's not really long, but for what it has to offer, I will at least say it's very unique. And I was never sure how they could ever turn a movie such as Jaws into a video game. But as for the gameplay itself, it's pretty interesting and kinda weird. But then again, what other ideas would they have come up with something like this? Now as for the controls, they're not bad. I actually think they're pretty alright. It can be a little bit slippery at times, but that's really the only complaint I'll make. Other than that, everything is very easy to get used to and it's pretty responsive as well. And as for the graphics, I think they look okay. I mean, nothing too fantastically amazing, but it works alright, so therefore I really don't have much complaints about that. And as for the music, I think the music is alright as well. Nothing very memorable, but it at least works alright. Although the title screen does kinda sound like the main theme of Jaws, you know, the one we're pretty familiar with, but I mean, other than that though, everything else is just kind of okay. It's simple, but it works, so therefore, I don't mind it. And if you want to buy this game is very cheap, and it's pretty common to find. I've seen it a few times myself. The lowest I've ever seen it for was $4 loose, and the most I've ever seen it for was like $12. And complete in box, the most I've seen it for that is like $35. And for me personally, I prefer just to have loose carts just because not only is it cheaper, but also at least the carts last longer, and they have end labels on the side. And what I mean by last longer, I mean by it'll last longer than having a disc that's loose. But that is just my personal preference, but I have to admit though, a lot of NES box games always do look really nice. And having a manual is always helpful, but sometimes getting a manual on its own is kinda tricky at times. depending on the game. But anyways, as for Jaws, yeah, it's a very easy to find game, and you shouldn't have any troubles finding it. And as for the score, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's a pretty decent game for what it is, and I know it's not gonna be the most amazing thing that you're ever gonna play on the NES, but for what it has to offer, I think it's kinda good. And I know some people say that a 6 out of 10 isn't very good, but for me personally, I think a 6 out of 10 is an alright for a game. And for me, I think that suits this game very well. And yet this happens to be one of those games that gets a really bad rep. Probably because of the fact that it was published by LJN, and of course people mistake them from being made by LJN. But just so you know, not all games that happen to be published by LJN happen to be bad. I mean, yeah, there are some that are bad. It's just like anything, where there's a lot of companies that do happen to make a lot of good games that have made some pretty bad ones before. But I do know what you mean when you're trying to generalize something, but either way though, as for Jaws, I think it's pretty decent, especially for a movie license game. And even when there's going to be some people that will say that this game sucks, all I have to say is that you can get plenty of worse games on the NES than this. But either way, I think it's decent, and if you guys don't, well hey, that's all good by me. So that's going to be the end of this review, and yeah, we ended up not needing a bigger boat for this one, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching and commenting.
Chicken McNugget.